I may be the only person in America, but I am far more enthusiastic about President Obama this time than I was 4 years ago.
All right, that was former President Bill Clinton at a campaign stop in Florida earlier today, and it seems like President Obama's most high-profile supporter is finally coming to terms with the dwindling excitement surrounding the anointed one, and he's certainly not alone. Now even the New York Times cannot ignore Governor Romney's forward momentum and is even admitting that Pennsylvania is, quote, in play. They said, quote, there is a tangible sense seen in Romney yard signs on the expansive lawns of homes in the well-heeled suburbs, and heard in the excited voices of Republican mothers who make phone calls to voters in their spare time that this race is now tilting towards Governor Romney. So is Pennsylvania upset a possibility? Here with the latest on that and the status of the race, syndicated columnist, Fox News contributor Charles Krauthammer. Charles, you and I were talking off air. First of all, what a backhanded compliment of Bill Clinton. But, you know, it seems like the president goes, gives Christie a hug, promises, you know, he's going to acting all presidential, and he flies off again to, of all places, Las Vegas. And since then, 1 in 3 gas stations are closed. 6 hours people are waiting online for gasoline. Tempers are flaring. Electricity is scarce, and people aren't getting the help they need. Janet Napolitano says, well, we'll get it to you as soon as possible. This is 5 days into this, and I'm thinking that whatever goodwill the president had is backfiring big time as America sees government's incompetence on display.
Well, it depends how it gets covered and how much coverage there will be. You know, Obama, in my mind, is the luckiest politician I've ever seen. Part of his rise in the Senate races, there's a long history of that sort of unusual things happening that paved the way for him. Here he is, I go back to Monday of this week. Romney's on a roll. He's increasing slightly every day, his lead in national polls, catching up in the swing states, and then Sandy hits. First of all, it freezes the race. Second of all, it monopolizes the news, so nothing else comes out. And inevitably, you get to play commander-in-chief. You get to be in the Situation Room. Of course, he wasn't on Libya, but that's another issue. And then, of course, he gets to stand out there with the governor of New Jersey, a Republican, so he can now play the bipartisan, whereas he's run the most partisan administration probably in the last 50 years. So he gets all of those images that are transmitted, priceless stuff that you couldn't possibly get in advertising. And then there's a subliminal thing, which is in a disaster, the party of government has the upper hand. If there's anything that we need government for, it's war, national emergencies, domestic and foreign. So it gives this aura, well, government, you know, perhaps it's the thing we need. And then, of course, you're exactly right. The first 3 days of a disaster, that's the solidarity phase. That's the phase when everybody is looking really good. And then he takes off, and, of course, now is the pain phase. This is inevitable. There's a huge disaster. The government cannot do everything it promises. But the question is, will this be local coverage, which I suspect it will, and will the national media fly off to Vegas with the president, which I think they're going to do?
You know, look, I don't know the answer to that. I suspect, like Brit Hume said, that, you know, I guess it's on our shoulders to tell the country that we've been lied to about Benghazi, that things that we were told are not true. They knew it wasn't true. They were watching this in real time. So maybe that's our role. But I think it's deeper than that, because this anger, this pain, this is his Katrina, as I say, because it is imploding. Charles, there are people, the temperatures are going down fast. There are people freezing. There are people dumpster diving, waiting 6 hours for gasoline out there. There is no help in sight. And, you know, then we got crews from Alabama that are being turned away by unions and called scabs and scumbags after they come up to New York to help restore power for people that need power. Those are the supporters of Obama. Well, that story is not going to be able to stay under wraps for 4 days. It's impossible.
Well, it's a question between under wraps and getting the publicity that all these stories, comparable stories, got in Katrina. And the difference, Katrina, you had George Bush as president, and here you've got Barack Obama as president. You got 1 week before the election. The national media are so invested in this guy. They are going to do everything they can to drag him over the finish line. And if they have to ignore this, they will ignore it the way they've ignored Benghazi. Now, you can't ignore it completely, but it's not going to get the blanket coverage that the feel-good stuff got last week. And that's why I think it's helped Obama to slightly recover in the national polls.
All right, we're running out of time. Last question I have for you. Who's going to win this election? Charles Krauthammer, your best prediction.
Romney, very close, but he'll win the popular by, I think, about half a point. Electoral college, probably a very narrow margin.
All right, Charles Krauthammer, it's going to be a long night on Tuesday, maybe even into Wednesday morning. But if you're right, I'll take a half a point. I'm predicting 3. I've got a friendly gentleman's bet dinner with you, and I'll be more than happy to pay. Thanks for being with us.
Pleasure.
All right, that's all the time we have left. Thank you for being with us.